Okay, I think it's a good time to make a start. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you especially to our guests, Rossella Biscotti and Valérie Cabanes, for generously accepting to take part in today's conversation. My name is Stefano Bendramin, curator in art related to the environment, and this is Creators Facing Climate Emergency, also known as Parole de Créateurs face à l'urgence écologique, a series of conversations that bring together once or twice a month an artist and a scientist or thinker to discuss their work, as well as their thoughts and solutions regarding today's environmental crisis. In particular, we seek to answer questions such as the following. What is the role and responsibility of the artists, scientists, and thinkers with regard to the environmental issues we're all facing? How are artistic practices being impacted? And how can artists collaborate with other disciplines to create a better future? The program is organized by the Fondation Tali, an art foundation and artist residency based in Brussels, founded by the curator, collector, and writer Nathalie Gouillot, also the initiator of this series. At the moment, at the foundation in Brussels, is a beautiful exhibition by the artist Kiki Smith entitled Inner Bodies, which you can see behind me now, running until the 1st of May, so I highly recommend you to come and visit. And today we are joined by Rossella Biscotti and Valérie Cabanes. Welcome. The discussion will last for 1 hour and is also live on our website, fondationtali.org and Facebook Live. And please don't hesitate to think about any questions you have for our guests. You can leave them in the chat or I will ask later, as there'll be a chance to ask at the very end of the conversation. And now to introduce our two speakers, Rossella Biscotti, hi.
Hello.
Born in Puglia, Italy, and based in Brussels, your work has been included in many international exhibitions, including Documenta 13, Manifesta 9 in 2012, the Venice Biennale in 2013, and Istanbul Biennale in 2013 as well. Solo exhibitions at Vils in Brussels, the Sculpture Center in New York, the VAC Foundation in Moscow, and Fondazione Ratti in Como, just to name a few. And in particular, you have a new solo exhibition, Trees on Land, which is currently on show at the Galerie Marchand-Pontier in Paris until the end of this week. Is that right?
Yes, he's right.
And as we'll see today, in your cross-media practice, which spans filmmaking, performance, sculpture, and installation work, you explore and reconstruct social and political moments from recent times through the experiences of individuals against the backdrop of a wider institutional system. Traces of people's lives, objects, and ideas, including photographs, film, sound, books, etc., are weaved together into new visual narratives that offer a different perspective of the past and illustrate the subjectivity of historical knowledge. And recent research includes the forced displacement and exploitation of bodies, both human, animal, and plant, during the Dutch colonial period in Southeast Asia, and another recent and long-term project, which we will be talking about today, which is called The Journey, started in 2016, which uses a 20-ton block of marble that you were awarded from the Michelangelo mine in Carrara, Italy, as a mechanism to unveil the political, economic, and environmental layers of the sea space. Perhaps, would you like to mention anything else you're up to this year?
No, I'm currently editing a sound performance of The Journey.
Okay, fantastic. Valérie Cabanes, you are a legal expert in international law, specialized in human rights, and with a particular interest in the rights of nature. Among your many activities, you're a member of the Executive Committee of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, as well as being one of the experts of the UN Harmony with Nature Initiative Network. Before COP21 in 2015, you co-founded with a group of lawyers the NGO Notre Affaire à tous, Our Shared Responsibility, which works towards climate justice in France. And during COP26 last year in Glasgow, you were part of the Rights of Nature Tribunal, an international institution established by citizens to investigate and publicize rights of nature violations. For many years, you've been campaigning for the legal recognition of ecocide, which we look forward to hearing more about in more detail during the discussion. And in 2013, you launched a European citizen-led initiative proposing a European directive on the crime of ecocide, and contributed to a proposal to amend the statute of the International Criminal Court on this very subject. You were also the author of several books, including Homo Natura and En Harmonie avec le Vivant, switching between English and French, published by Boucher Castel in 2017, Un nouveau droit pour la terre pour en finir avec l'Ecocide, published by série in 2016, as well as its English translation, Rights for Planet Earth, published by Natraj Publishers in 2018. And you also appear in the recent book, which is related to the documentary film Animal in English, obviously, by Cyril Dion about biodiversity, which the Fondation Tali also was a proud sponsor. Is there anything else as well that you'd like to mention that you're working on at the moment, this year or recently?
Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, this year is a year where I try to connect with art. So it's quite amazing to be with you today. We opened an exhibition in the Museum of Resistance and Deportation in Grenoble, in France. We made an exhibition with the filmmaker and photographer Corto Fajal. And we travel around Europe to discover the places where rights of nature are emerging, and guardians of nature are seeking for justice. And we made an exhibition with photographies and drones, images and sounds, very immersive, very sensitive, and also explanation that I wrote. And we did it also by combining those experiences in Europe with the emergence of the rights of nature movement everywhere in the world, because there are a lot of cases around the world that we may speak about today. But so it's a way to speak about law and art at the same time. And it will be open up to the end of September in Grenoble.
Great. It's interesting to know that there's a link between these two that seem very separate subjects, and it's something that obviously we're looking into today. So to start off, Rossella, we were speaking obviously earlier, and you mentioned to me that you're looking back at your work and in preparation for the discussion, but also obviously given the current situation, you came across an earlier work from 2004, 2006 called The Sun Shines in Kiev, which is centered around the Chernobyl disaster. Could you tell us a little bit more about this work and what its wider implication is for you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Stefano. And thank you, Valerie. It's very exciting to be here in this conversation. So I propose to start with this work is looking back into this topic and deciding some works for this conversation. I look myself into this work that, as you said, I started in 2004, and is called The Sun Shines in Kiev. Here I have a poster that I made. It's a work that started with looking back at the newspaper of that time of 1986, and when the nuclear power plant in Chernobyl, that was at the time Soviet Union, the fourth reactor, there was a meltdown of the fourth reactor, causing a huge disaster. There was at a certain point, it was quite soon monitored also in Finland, in Italy as well, in Austria, and so radiation were extremely high. And then, of course, we all got to know also internationally about what was happening. And I started by looking at this. At a series of articles. In particular, I was interested in this article, and then I composed inside of this poster. It's called The Sun Shines in Kiev. That's what it gives the title to the work. And in this article, you see, basically you read about a reporter, Western reporter, and his article from Pierre Lesourd, that they are, for the first time, they are on the 9th of May, they are given permission to enter the exclusive zone of Chernobyl, and with a bus with all closed windows to go through the landscape and see what was happening at that time. And of course, they were mainly staying in Kiev. It was spring, so it was April, and it's really interesting because this article talks about the landscape and the invisibility of radiation. So the difficulties, I guess they didn't get to the reactor, which you will see is completely like broken up, and people were trying to clean it and to enclose it. So what they see is actually a landscape that is in spring with flowers, and is like, it's so they in this article they reflect on the invisibility of radiation, the difficulties to communicate also visually what was happening, or to communicate without really explaining to people. I also think what was very interesting for me, and is a starting point of the work as a visual artist, was also how do you talk about a disaster that is, and radiation, especially when you cannot really see them, especially through film. So I started to collect, the first things I did was a collection of documentaries and film mainly from Ukrainian, Russian, and Belarusian filmmakers that in all these years, so till 2004 actually, so till the year in which I started working on this project, started to talk about Chernobyl and filming the landscape. In this process, there is the best part that you didn't see in the image before because I could not find a digital image, but in the best part of these posters, it's a series of emails, which it was very interesting to read today, but basically they create a network of filmmakers and documentary production companies that have been really dealing with this issue of visibility and also communication. How do you communicate to people or to the population the level of radiation if you don't have an instrument like a Geiger, if you don't have monitoring, it's this collection at the end. It was I donated. I left it at the archive of WISE in Amsterdam, of the organization WISE in Amsterdam. And while researching this, I actually found few images that were belonging to the first period of the disaster, in which you see these white spots. So what you see here, they are images that were really recorded really right in the beginning. And I purchased some of these images both in Kiev and in Moscow. And then I developed a full installation that was made out of slides, a video. The video is particularly concentrated on the life of an Ukrainian filmmaker called Vladimir Savchenko that decided to film the nuclear meltdown right in the beginning when it happened. Actually, today I remember that his film was commissioned by the organization of cinema, the State Cinema Committee of US, of Soviet Union. And so it's, one second, before going to the film, I would like to go maybe back to the slides, if possible. I'm sorry for the slides. Okay, let's just continue. Can we stop the film? No. Okay. So also because the film is important in the sound, but we don't hear sound at the moment. But what you see now is basically an extract of a film I realized, and this film has been mainly focusing on the life of Vladimir Savchenko, which you see now filming really right on the reactor in the Chernobyl area. And what you see now, unlikely, I think you don't hear the sound, but the sound is very important because Savchenko realized while he was filming that this white spot that he found on the film were synchronized with the Geiger sound. So what you hear is this very strong sound of the Geiger, which unluckily we didn't hear, and you see that appears and goes beeping very strongly in the moment in which this these white spots are on the film. So when I found these images, I started to build up the narration, but also I found that actually Kodak had a special film made as a dosimeter for workers that were working in the nuclear power plant. So actually these two things that they came together inside of my installation that was, as I said, it was composed by 3 different slide projection in which I had a piece of film being cut and then spread over through a time, and then you see these spots coming within the buildings, coming within a reactor, and also you see one in which you see 2 people walking and this white spot on it, and then you had the film and the poster. So this was, let's say, a first a starting point also for Valerie to maybe picking up from here and start talking about it. And I proposed this to start talking about this also politics or the invisibility of disasters. So till the moment in which we don't see the effects, also because before Stefano was mentioning, I have a work which is a current work that is called The Journey, and that will be a sound performance. So it will be at the moment mainly concentrated on a sound composition. And I find it also interesting at this moment to talk about how do you, instead of visual, for example, how do you talk or how do you can narrate about pollution through sound. So I leave it to you, Valerie. Maybe you want to develop from here.
Yes, thank you. I think it's very powerful at the moment where there is this Ukrainian war and the invasion of the country, but also of the Chernobyl power plant by the Russian army. I just heard an hour ago that they left the place, which is a good news because it means that we can control it again. And the civil nuclear energy is really something which bothers me a lot because it shows by its invisible risk all the problem we have today with the denial in front of all the ecological collapse and the climate change. We can see, it's since the first summit, the Earth Summit in '72 in Stockholm, that we had the first alerts about pollution, about climate change risk and consequences, about the loss of biodiversity, the fact that even today we consider that we are engaged in a 6th mass extinction. And it's very complicated to speak about first what is invisible and may affect our lives, and also what is coming, because we tend to ignore what we don't feel ourselves directly. And climate change starts to be an issue because even in Europe, we start to feel the consequences, for example. But to come back to the civil nuclear energy, I'm very worried because it is presented today as a clean energy, as a renewable energy, as an answer to to cut our dependence to fossil fuels, for example. And I'm very worried because you have so many risks within the chain of this technology. You have risk when you mine to get the uranium from the ground. And it's quite interesting to know that while we were testing, for example, nuclear weapons in the desert or in Polynesia, for example, the French government were testing the nuclear bomb. No one was looking at the consequences to the population around. But we were concerned about the radiation and the dust, the radioactive dust from the uranium mines in France. There were, I think, nearly 140 mines in France at a time. So we decided that we shall, close them down, and we built supermarkets, we built roads, we built even schools on those mines, which still irradiate radiance gas. We know that. And what we did is that we went somewhere else to dig the mines. Where we went to, for example, Niger, in the desert, where people live, like the nomads and the Tuaregs and the local populations. And Areva, the French company who is still mining uranium in the deserts, they pump fossil water from underground fossil water reserves. And when they pump all the water, they just change places and they dig again and they pump again. And the mine itself release this radium gas, release radioactive emissions and particles. The people, they use even the materials, the iron, which has been contaminated, and they sell it on the markets. So everyone is contaminated and no one is looking. And so there is two kinds of invisible pollution. There is the real one, the one that you can't see, but there is also the way we people, we don't want to see, we don't want to look at. And there are also mines in Kazakhstan and in Russia and in Uzbekistan. And so even the Ukrainian war today shows us that we are not only dependent on fossil fuels, on gas from Russia, we are also dependent on the uranium that we dig from Russia and from former Russian countries. And what we have to know also is everyone knows about the risk of an explosion, a risk of a disaster like it happened in Fukushima in Japan. But who thinks about the nuclear waste, which is the end of the line, which is the end of the system? I could spend hours to speak about this because there are so many ways, we have this waste factory in France, like the Hague, and there is some tanks full of waste that are leaking within the sea at the moment. And there have been also a lot of testing, but no one cares about that. Now we speak about, burying the waste. And we know that these particles are radioactive for more than 100,000 years, which means that it's a risk for generations to come for 100,000 years, and no one speaks about that. And just to come back to my advocacy work, it's very interesting to know that the International Criminal Court, who is looking at, who is focusing on the worst crimes against humanity, against peace and human security, the crime of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. When states were drafting the statute, the founding statute of the International Criminal Court, there were discussions ongoing about this invisible pollution. And the discussion started even during the Vietnam War, because the American army used a dioxin, the Agent Orange, to defoil the forest and to find the Viet Cong people. And today, children are, when they born, they suffer from monstrous abnormalities and genetic disease and cancer 60 years after. This is a kind of invisible pollution because it's going into the ground, it pollutes the environment, it pollutes the body, it pollutes the genes, and it passes through generations. And so there were discussions about recognizing crimes against the environment in war times, like the Agent Orange issue, or like the phosphor bomb that maybe the Russians are using at the moment in Ukraine. But it was also discussed to recognize the crime of ecocide on or crimes against the environment in peacetime. And in one night, the article about the crimes against the environment in peacetime was removed under the pressure of 4 states. And which were they? That was, of course, United States, UK, the Netherlands, and France. And in fact, in the 4th, you have 3 who are nuclear states. And France, I think, was pushing against because they felt that this invisible pollution linked to the use of uranium and even the civil nuclear energy will be one day recognized as ecocide and a crime against future generation. And we are standing now still waiting for this crime to be recognized because it is one of the worst industrial technologies, and it is an invisible pollution, as you said. And that's the way I can link what you explain and what you show with this exhibition, but also the work done by this incredible filmmaker. Is that we have to, we have to stop to be blind and monkeys like this, not facing the reality. And it's the same for the climate. It's the same for the 6 mass extinction ongoing. We really have to stand for the rights of nature and our rights and the rights of future generations. Thank you.
It's really interesting. Thank you for that, Valerie. And it's really interesting to see, obviously, your earlier work, Rossella. I think probably most of the audience may not have seen that work. And I think there's obviously a clear link to the journey, which I'd love for you to tell us about. I wanted to also make a point, Valerie, which is, obviously, we talk about Chernobyl, we talk about, Agent Orange as obviously huge human disasters. And we don't really think about almost the environmental. I mean, when they were putting the gas, the chemicals on the forest, it was really just, there wasn't even a thought about the environment. It was about the trees, about the natural world. It was really, okay, anything we can do to hurt the Vietnamese. So it was, I mean, they're also huge environmental disasters. We don't really think about it. We don't talk about it as much, right?
Yeah, and it's very important to raise that point because this is exactly the core, I mean, the spirit of the rights of nature movement and the movement to recognize the crime of ecocide is to claim the fact that we forgot, and especially Western countries forgot, that they are interdependent, intertwined with the ecosystems on Earth, and that humans are part of nature. We are nature. And it is a grace because we are nature who looks at herself. And because we are conscious. But the Western traditions, religions, philosophies forgot that and started to believe that human beings was a part, disconnected from nature, but more than this, was the master on Earth and looked at the Earth as a property. And it brought us to decide about, private properties, about the commercial law, how commercial trade law as it is built today, and even led us to consider that even trade law and property rights were even more important than human rights themselves. That's where we are today. And what we request is look at science. Science says that, there are biological laws that we have to follow. If we cross the planetary boundaries, and we have crossed on the 9 that have been defined since 2009, we have crossed already 5: climate change, loss of biodiversity, modification of land use with deforestation, what we put in the soil with the excess of phosphorus and nitrogen, so the quality of the soil. And the fifth one, we just crossed it a month ago. It's about pollution. It's about the nanoparticles. It's about antibiotics. It's about all the endocrine, you know, I'm not sure about the word in English, perturbators.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, which has an invisible effect on the bodies, on the genes, and which leads to obesity, to diabetes, to infertility, and so on. And this threshold, this boundary has been already crossed. So we need to look at what science says and consider that the rules that we define to live amongst humans should be integrated in wider rules, which are the rules, you know, of the natural world, and that we need to maybe even to change the scale of norms today, considering that we need to protect and recognize the rights of nature to exist, to perdure, to be maintained, to be restored, which will protect the rights of humans as fundamental rights, the right to health, the rights to water, the rights to clean air, the right to habitat, to food. They are, you know, the main rights that we try to protect with the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights and with the UN. But at the moment, even those rights are not protected because we destroy nature, and also because we let the corporates draw the lines. So we need new moral lines, and the crime of ecocide is one of the moral lines that we need to define today and discuss, because it's really we are in a 6th mass extinction, which means that we can go to up to 90% of the life on Earth, which will disappear, but we might be the next species to disappear. So there is a kind of emergency there. And I think Rossella, through her work along the years, explore and exhibit a lot of ecocides and disasters. And maybe Rossella can share with us other work on that she, because I think you do a lot of investigation before you organize even your exhibition, no?
Yes, that's true. I meet a lot of people, and I go on site. So that's very important for me to be really seeing, to meet people, to meet some of the activists. For example, now I was in Gebes, where part of this of the work, the journey, I went recording along the coastline of Tunisia, and but maybe I would like to start with the slide, if possible, the number 7, because I think it will be interesting also to connect to Valerie in relation to also the
I think, yeah, what's interesting is just as in you can show in your work, you showed the Chernobyl disaster in a sort of indirect way. You showed what is the invisible effects of through the film, but also in the journey you show other invisible elements, such as the oil and gas licenses, or even pollution through a sound work that you're working on. Maybe that's something you can.
Yeah, I mean, the journey is quite a complex project. I wanted to show this image because it's basically the first iteration, somehow you can call it, of this project, in which we have there is a photograph I made in 2011, and is a photograph, is basically a map drawn on a piece of wood, and it was a map that has been seized by the the police, the Italian police, the financial police in Italy, on the arrival of a migrant boat in Lampedusa. So I was there, and then I photographed this map. And what you see as a reference, you can go to the next slides. Maybe what you can see is a reference is, of course, there are the Kerkena Highlands, and there is the oil field, and then of course the line goes up and is hitting the Lampedusa, which is the island on top. And if you go back to the slides before, that's the first presentation of the journey. It was very simple, but is combined with extracts from the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and in particular in relation to pollution and dumping. So what can you dump and see? What are the what is possible in this case? And for me, it was also interesting to really connect this what is the protection of sea, and maybe also into that, Valerie, you are what is instead the protection of human rights. So what is possible? So this was the first time I presented the journey, and then later I started to map the area of the central area of the Mediterranean Sea between Italy, Malta, Tunisia and Libya in a series of maps, and I realized also a series of shows. For example, they were mapping the gas and oil licenses or the military operation, but also like underwater cable, etc., etc. So the journey has been developed in various ways. Last year there was a performance happening at sea, in which I took this block of marble that was granted, awarded to me by a prize in 2010 from a quarry. So again, we are talking here about extraction of a mineral that has been extracted since hundreds of years, and it constitutes a main one of the main material for sculptors and for artists through the whole years. And I won it with a prize, with a sculpture that was not made in marble. It was, when I was granted this piece of stone, I decided I want to make a project with it and not sculpt it and make a sculpture. So I made it travel through the sea, and then I released it into water. So I'm not going to elaborate on this, but basically the journey has various phases. And through all this process, I have been mainly realizing sound recording. And that's where I'm at the moment, and what I'm preparing. I'm preparing a performance for the Kunstfestival des Arts, the new edition in May, which is going to be a very long performance in which I will work, I will edit, I'm in the editing process, sounds that I have been recording on the water, underwater, sounds of motor, sounds of fish farms, sounds that, that basically on the ship, on the radius of the ship, with fishermen, with songs and storytelling of the fishermen, how things changed. And then particularly if we go further in the slides, I would like to go to the sea. If you can go further, these are the maps, the blueprint maps that I was talking about. So this has been in the beginning of March, where I was in Gebes, and I met a militant, an activist from the collective Stop Pollution, Khareddin Debaya, and he took us, me and musician Attila Faravelli, that was sound recording at that moment, doing field recording, to see some of the sites where there is basically an ecocide happening at the moment. So the story of this location is very complex, and of course I'm at the moment really, actually today I was translating Khareddin interview, and but I would like to say a few things. These are photographs that are in an area that is not really visible by people because it's behind a really huge amount of rocks, and is actually been militarized, so it's been closed by a net. Maybe in the next image, in the next slides, you will see, and in the next again, I think, you will see also the net appearing at a certain point. So what you have here is the Gulf of Gabes is very important for the Mediterranean Sea. It's is a place where basically all the fishes, all the animals were going to reproduce. Actually, in one of the tracks of my maps, there is a track of a turtle that was released in Malta by Nature Trust. And what you see is that all the turtles, they reach Gabes. But Gabes it's an incredible polluted place. It was a very important oasis. There were 3 millenary oases here. They were connected with the sea. So it was really connecting the desert through this incredible oasis to the Mediterranean Sea. And in the 72, they started building up what is the Tunisian chemical group, starting because it's 6 units that have been built up through the time, and that produces fertilizer. It's a bit, I will look it up a little bit. So it's a phosphate fertilizer plants. What you see here in this river is actually the discharge from this specific plant, because in the time they were creating a huge industrial zone with many companies like Total, British Gas, Agile Gas, Pet Crystal is a French company, OMV is an Austrian company, ICF company. So it's not only this Tunisian fertilized chemical plant. What you see here, and they explain me, is this discharge of phosphogypsum. Sorry for my pronunciation. I'm learning at the moment. That is a byproduct of the production of fertilizer from phosphate rock. And what you see before, the images of this white foam SC, it's actually fluoride that has been directly discharged from another factory directly SC. So these not the only things that happen in Gabes. There is a lot of gas and for example, this is in the interview, what Keredin says is that when journalist arrives there and meet somebody from Stop Pollution, one of the things they do is saying, okay, choose a street, whatever street here, and we will knock at the door and you will see that there are at least 2 or more people in the family that have cancer or they have illness. So in a way we are going back, and when I met him, I said, okay, we need to find a way in which I can bring this story and this pollution and we also dropped an hydrophone inside of this water to see, can we record something that it will give this idea of this discharge and pollution. But of course, sound-wise is very difficult. And what we found also a way to build up a narration is going with Heredin Debaya in a car, and he will point out to each company, say what they do, say how they store like radioactive material, just like in open air, or describe things. And it was very important for me to remind him, we are not seeing, because this pollution you can see in this video and these images, but you will not see this. The public that will see my performance will hear. So we'll hear your voice, we'll hear the sounds of it. So we had to find a way to build it up differently. So I wanted to bring this one as well to you, Valerie, because I think it's also, it's also very important as a form of discharge and dumping and of material from multinational company and industry directly in the environment. And and also what you mentioned, and it was also what all the activists from Stop Pollution mentioned, is like, we just want to breathe. And I found that very powerful. And of course, going back to the environment of this beautiful, incredible oasis sea.
Yeah, the work you did and even the case reminds me of a case on which we worked with an NGO that I co-founded in France, which name is Why Legal. We organized a mock trial on a real case of Ecocide. We organized that in June 2021. And it was about an industrial pollution in the Mediterranean Sea. It's something, I mean, there is a dead zone today. It's the Cassidane Canyon in the Calanque National Park on more than 300 meters is full of toxic red muds. 30 million of tons of toxic red muds were released there between 1967 and 2015. And so you have 300 meters of toxic muds, which today are not red anymore because the company from 2015, when they realized that we were showing the case, invented a system to keep the color away, but the toxic waste is still going into the sea. And so we organize a mock trial, and it is something that we always also do with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. Since 2013, we organize regularly during the COPs, for example. It happened in Glasgow, in Paris, but also regionally. We organize citizen trials, mock trials, where real victims, real experts, and appointed judges who are lawyers, jurists, or very famous activists like Vandana Shiva or Nimo Basse from Nigeria, look at cases of ecocide or violation of the rights of nature. So we did that for these red muds, and it was done at the beginning by Alteo Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto aluminium is very famous in the world because they have a lot of mines, for gold mines everywhere. But here it was about aluminium and albumin. And we collaborated, and maybe you might be interested to join them. But we collaborated with people from an NGO called Interpret, without an E at the end, interpret.org. And it's a group of researchers, of architects and spatial designers. And they are dedicated to environmental justice. And so they document, they investigate on many cases around the world. They investigated on Mururoa nuclear test. They investigated also on these red muds for us. And then they design visually on maps the places which have been impacted or destroyed, and they have an investigative team even really to work on this. So it's very accurate and very powerful images or films that can be used during trials. And here you see the link of people who have artistic vision, but who are committed, to make a change, and becomes the allies of lawyers, of people who advocate for it can be for ecocide, but not only, but it can be also advocate for the protection of nature in general. And I invite all of you to look at the work they do on the web, because I think it's what you explained about Tunisia and the way you worked with the maps and the people there is very close to this the work Interpret is doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. It made me reflect when we were there and we were trying to understand how to really communicate this through sound, how to record it, because we have a very specific way every time to record with different devices, and to really get into detail what we want to talk about. It's which kind of materiality or sound we want to communicate. Or, of course, I talked about the hydrophone that is like going into the water, and really in that case it was very interesting because it was also picking up the contact of this mud more than water. So the sound, it was very muddy, was very different than what it would be a clean water. But while we were doing this, Heredin Debaya did a live on Facebook, and he was already like communicating what he was seeing, all the fluoride, because as I said, we were in the military area, so it's like, I'm sure they assess it quite often to bring people to see what's happening, but it's also the level of things, of course, changes. So it seems at that time it was quite intense, the level of discharge waste. There was industrial waste that was thrown at sea. And but I do think that there is a difference in the way things are composed, in the way are communicated. So I'm quite interested, for example, in the fact that the majority or quite often my research is used by other specialists. For example, I mean, because in a way it's not only a documentation, it has a particular perspective into it. Or is recorded in a particular way visually or on the level of sound, or there is a different things, like, for example, it's this photo of the map of the, let's say, I call it migrant map, is actually, it was I wasn't really allowed to make it myself, so I had to ask somebody from the police that was with me to make it with his own camera. It was just a normal camera, and then I asked it to give it to me. So it was a kind of, but in a way, they would have make it to catalog, but they will never think it's quite an incredible documentation. It's quite an incredible object to photograph, because it says really a lot. It says a lot, not only on the migrant route, on the fact that it's a piece of wood, what are the references there, etc., etc. So I think there is a different perspective in relation to, for example, an activist, a militant, and an artist. And there is a different time in which what you do get seen, gets exposed, and also get experienced. Of course, for example, now for me to see or to relook at the Sunshines in Kiev, it's interesting. Also, I see what I would have done differently with the knowledge I have now, for example, but also it's interesting to see how concern return, or it's like they never disappear, as you say. Things were already since a long time, we should have been concerned about it, but we didn't. So they were always there, these issues, but they were not represented. And many of the activists I have worked with, they work on the moment, and of course they work on a long time, but hitting, let's say, having very, very strong and very precise goal and objective that they constantly try to target and try to communicate as much as possible almost every day. So I think there is a little bit a different way both to communicate, but also like a different way the spectator can experience an artwork, or can experience, let's say, also communication specifically done to change something within the environment, or other form of, in a other form of forms of activism. So yeah, that's what.
We're almost at the end. I wonder if the audience, if anybody in the audience has any questions, now is a good time to put it in the chat. And
maybe I can just add something, because since the beginning we are speaking about you know, really terrible damages and pollution, and how to make them visible. But I just wanted to share the fact that, for example, when we started, I spoke about the exhibition that we prepared for the Museum of Grenoble, and which opened in February. And I remember that we discussed with Corto Fajal about, shall we show the images or shall we show the beauty?
Mm-hmm.
And it's about the rights of nature, and we decided that we'll show the beauty. As I explained, a lot of people are disconnected from nature, and some people, you know, when you show them the misery, the destruction, it's too hard, it's too difficult to process, and sometimes they prefer not to look at. And to understand that we need to recognize the rights of nature, I believe also that we need to reconnect to nature, and we reconnect to its beauty and our fascination and our, you know, our wonder. And so we decided to do this exhibition by showing beautiful places where the rights of nature are requested by the people, and also using techniques like you may use, Rossella, which is using the sound. So you can follow a river with, you know, with a cask and just listening to the sound of the water. And the sound is very different when it starts from the mountain like a small stream, and when it becomes a huge river at the end. Listening to the birds, the migrating birds on the Wadden Sea in the Netherlands, or in Ireland when the swans, the migrant swans arrive. It's just, or the goose is just, you know, amazing. You cannot speak to each other. It's so strong, but it empowered the people to and give them the envy, the wish, really, you know, to stand for nature. And then you can show that, and that was my role, is to speak about the people who are advancing the rights of nature movement, and showing that they decided to become guardians and to stand. And so art can be so powerful, you know, to give the envy of the people to stand and maybe become activists in their way. But it's not only with awful message, awful visuals that we make the people move. It depends of the sensitivity. It depends of the of each one of us, and so art has this power to choose paths to touch the people and to make them react.
And Rossella, we won't have time to talk about your current exhibition, which obviously we encourage everybody to go and see, or online or in physical. But what you think is really interesting with your current project, where you look at this bacteria that is destroying the palm tree in Puglia, and you also decided as part of that to some of the revenues from the exhibition to go to a foundation over there. Isn't that right?
Yes, it's a current show at the gallery in Paris, Mont Charpentier, and it's called Trees on Land. It's what I mean. It's a series of ceramics that were realized using mixing the clay with the ashes of trees that were dead. Actually, they were burnt. So they were not only dead because of a bacteria that since 2013 is basically killing all the olive trees cultivation in the southern part of Apulia in Italy, but they were also burned because of various reasons. First, people start to burn the olive tree because they were very contradictory directories from the government in relation to what to do to stop the spread of this disease. But then also, like, of course, always in the summer there are huge fires that, especially now with the dead trees, it burns the full landscape, or or people start to burn the trees because they cannot even extract, or like basically they want to clear the land. So I collected it for choosing trees that were burned, collected ashes, made ceramic, and well, in a very old laboratory workshop in Italy. And when the ceramic gets inside of the oven in the kiln, the all organic material, the ashes, burn away, so goes away, and what you have left on this object is actually all imperfection and holes as well. That reminds what was these ashes that were put inside. Another part of the exhibition is a series of what I call rubber works, that is very complex, intricate works made in natural rubber that talks about some female characters of a book from a later author, Pramudia Anantatur, Indonesian author. So it's, yeah, there is a very thin, very interesting connection in between these two works, which is of course about trees and about extraction. Maybe something that people don't know is actually that this particular cultivation of olive tree, and it's interesting because you talked about palm trees, and for me it's like I came back home from a research on the oil palm cultivation and plantation in the Southeast Asian, and only then I could see my own landscape as a plantation, because of course I could not see it. So we go back to this idea of the difficulties to really realize things when you don't want to somehow. And so it's the oil tree cultivation in that part of Puglia is actually in that particular part is very recent, is from the Industrial Revolution. So also here we go back to this topic of industrialization, and there were mainly olive trees for producing oil for lamps, so to give light.
It's all we've got time for almost. We have one last question that we always ask all of our guests, and it's for our audience. If you could recommend one action that we should take today to combat the situation, the climate change, or something that you've read or watched that you'd recommend for our audience related to these themes. Maybe Rossella, do you want to?
I mean, I'm always very touched by people and things people I meet and things I see. I would really recommend to really dig into this Stop Pollution collective of Gebes, and to, I don't know if they have a way to be financed, to be supported, but also it would be wonderful if Valerie could, could get in contact, and maybe we could organize something in relation to this particular situation, which is very close to my heart at the moment.
Valerie, could you offer anything for our audience as well?
Yeah, we are in the middle of a huge campaign to get the crime of ecocide recognized within a directive on environmental crimes it's all directive from 2008 in Europe. And so we are lobbying to get the crime of ecocide integrated in the new version of this directive, and as well requesting that the crime of ecocide should be recognized by the International Criminal Court. And for that, I just propose that you go on the Stop Ecocide international website. You can sign, of course, a petition, but you can also become an Earth protector and join the movement, to push your members of parliament to advance the cause. So, of course, I propose to be more active on that. There is also a project of a Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, which is discussed in the UN since 2010. It was drafted in Cochabamba in Bolivia in 2010. And it's still discussed and needs the support of the citizens. Politicians never move without the support of citizens. So there is a petition to sign also, the Rights of Mother Earth, you will find it. Declaration for the Rights of Mother Earth. But at the end, what is very inspiring, and just 2 hours ago, I was with Irish people, and they try to recognize the rights of nature within their own regions, municipalities, districts, and change the governance in their local territories and ecosystems. And so there is a network today of European citizen movement for the rights of nature. And if you look at the hub of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature Europe, you will see that there are citizen initiative raising, and even politicians now and cities signing, like in Corsica, the Assembly of Corsica in December decided to recognize the rights of nature and the rights of a river in Corsica. And that's really a very concrete way, I mean, to become a guardian of the ecosystem where you live, to be involved in the movement.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing. Thank you both so much for taking time today to be with us and sharing with our audience. Thank you as well, of course, to our audience for attending, for watching our conversation. The next conversation will be on the 14th of April with Francesca Boromitsatisen of TBA 21 and Ocean Space, speaking to environmental economist Jane Damosta, based in Venice. So it's a special edition on Venice with the upcoming Biennale, and also Venice obviously is a place of extreme environmental risk as well, and as well with the artist Sonia Levy. And of course, I invite you all to go to Rossella's exhibition now on at Marche-en-Fontier, also the exhibition in Brussels in May. Is that right?
It's the performance is 20, 21 and 22 of May, and it will be in Beaux-Arts.
And of course, to follow both of your activities on your Instagrams. And I know you have an exhibition, of course, Valerie, the exhibition talked about is on in Grenoble. So if anybody's in Grenoble until, I think, September, they can go to see that. And this conversation will be, of course, on Facebook, on our website, on YouTube in a few days, soon, very soon on podcasting platforms. So please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, newsletter to keep up to date. And until then, I wish you all a very, very fantastic evening and beginning to the weekend soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.